Most people believe confidence is something they have to earn. They tell themselves, I'll be confident when I become successful. I'll be confident when people respect me. I'll be confident when I stop making mistakes. But that belief is the very reason they never become truly confident. They have unknowingly handed the ownership of their confidence to the outside world. If success creates your confidence, failure can destroy it. If praise builds your confidence, criticism can break it. If other people's approval makes you feel valuable, then their rejection has the power to make you question yourself. This is not confidence, it is psychological dependence. And psychological dependence can never produce dangerous confidence. Dangerous confidence begins the moment your self-worth stops asking permission from the world around you. The first psychological barrier separating ordinary people from dangerously confident people is the need for validation. Every human being enjoys appreciation, but most people secretly depend on it. They constantly look for signs that they are accepted, admired, or approved of. They measure their value through compliments, attention, social media reactions, or the opinions of family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. Their emotional state rises when they receive praise and falls the moment they face criticism. Without realizing it, they have allowed other people to become the judges of their identity. A dangerously confident person refuses to live this way. They understand that the moment another person's opinion begins controlling your emotions, that person quietly begins controlling your life. This need for approval is not a weakness you were born with. It is a psychological pattern built over years of conditioning. From childhood, most people are rewarded when they meet expectations and corrected when they disappoint others. Slowly, the brain begins connecting acceptance with safety and rejection with danger. As adults, this conditioning continues without being questioned. Many people no longer ask themselves, is this what I truly believe? Instead, they ask, will people agree with me? Every decision becomes filtered through the fear of judgment. They avoid speaking honestly because someone may criticize them. They hide their ambitions because success may attract envy. They remain silent because disagreement feels emotionally risky. Their life becomes a performance designed to protect approval rather than express authenticity. A dangerously confident person breaks this conditioning by realizing that approval is pleasant, but it is never necessary for self-respect. Think about how many opportunities disappear because of imagined judgment. Someone refuses to start a business because relatives might laugh if it fails. Another person never approaches someone they admire because rejection feels unbearable. Others spend years staying in unhealthy relationships simply because they fear being alone. None of these decisions are controlled by reality. They are controlled by anticipated opinions. The human mind often creates emotional prisons long before any real obstacle appears. Dangerous confidence destroys these invisible prisons because it no longer treats imagined judgment as a reason to stop acting. It understands that fear of criticism has prevented more dreams than criticism itself ever has. One of the greatest psychological traps is believing that universal approval is possible. The mind convinces itself that if it behaves perfectly, speaks carefully enough, and avoids upsetting anyone, everyone will eventually accept it. But human psychology makes this impossible. People evaluate you through their own experiences, beliefs, insecurities, expectations, and emotions. The same decision will earn admiration from one person and criticism from another. The same personality will attract some people while pushing others away. If your confidence depends on satisfying everyone, your confidence will constantly collapse because human opinions are naturally inconsistent. Dangerous confidence is born when you stop chasing impossible approval and begin respecting your own principles more than changing public opinion. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing to learn. Insecure people reject criticism because they fear it. Dangerously confident people examine criticism because they are not controlled by it. They ask one simple question: is this feedback true? If it helps them grow, they accept it without damaging their self-worth. If it is driven by jealousy, misunderstanding, or projection, they let it go without emotional struggle. Their confidence remains stable because it is connected to self-awareness rather than constant validation. They are willing to improve, but they refuse to surrender their identity every time someone disagrees with them. Notice how people who possess dangerous confidence behave in difficult situations. They do not desperately explain every decision, hoping everyone will understand them. They do not panic when someone dislikes them. They do not abandon their values just to avoid temporary discomfort. Their calmness comes from psychological independence. They understand that respect earned by pretending to be someone else is fragile, while respect earned through authenticity becomes lasting. Because they no longer fear losing approval, they become remarkably difficult to manipulate. Guilt no longer controls them. Criticism no longer defines them. Rejection no longer stops them. Their confidence is built on something the outside world cannot easily take away. The greatest shift happens inside the mind. Instead of asking, "How do I make people believe in me?" they begin asking, "Do I believe in myself enough to keep moving even if nobody else does?" That question changes everything. It transfers power from the crowd back to the individual. Confidence is no longer borrowed from applause or destroyed by silence. It becomes a personal decision repeated every day through consistent action, honest self-evaluation, and unwavering respect for one's own values. This is what separates ordinary confidence from dangerous confidence. Ordinary confidence survives only while conditions remain favorable. Dangerous confidence survives criticism, rejection, failure, misunderstanding, and isolation because its foundation exists within, not outside. The moment you stop allowing the world to decide your worth, you become psychologically free in a way that most people never experience. And once your confidence no longer depends on approval, there is only one obstacle powerful enough to challenge it: the fear that has been silently controlling your decisions all along. Fear has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. Most people believe they lack confidence because they are afraid, but that is not the real problem. The real problem is that they have misunderstood the psychology of fear itself. They wait for fear to disappear before taking action, believing confidence will magically arrive first. But dangerous confidence is built in exactly the opposite way. Fear never disappears before action. It weakens only after repeated action. The people who appear fearless are rarely born that way. They simply understand something that most people never learn. Fear is a prediction, not a prophecy. It is the brain imagining danger before reality has even had a chance to speak. The moment you understand this psychological truth, you begin developing the kind of dangerous confidence that very few people ever experience. Your brain was never designed to make you confident. It was designed to keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, hesitation protected human survival. Assuming the worst often prevented fatal mistakes. That ancient survival system still exists today, but the world has changed. Instead of warning you about wild animals or physical threats, your brain now treats rejection, embarrassment, criticism, and failure as if they were life-threatening dangers. Before speaking in public, asking someone out, starting a business, changing careers, or expressing an unpopular opinion, your mind begins creating catastrophic scenarios. It tells you that people will laugh, reject you, judge you, or remember your mistakes forever. None of these events have happened yet, but your body reacts as though they already have. This is why fear feels so convincing. The brain cannot always distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. Dangerous confidence begins when you stop treating every fearful thought as undeniable truth. One of the greatest psychological mistakes people make is believing that confident people simply experience less fear. In reality, confident people often feel the same emotional discomfort as everyone else. The difference lies in interpretation. Ordinary people see fear as a stop sign. Dangerously confident people see fear as evidence that they are approaching something meaningful. They understand that the strongest fear usually appears right before significant growth. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" they ask, "What will happen if I allow fear to decide my future?" That single shift transforms fear from a prison into a compass. Instead of running away from discomfort, they begin walking directly toward it because they recognize that fear often guards the doorway to personal transformation. Notice how fear quietly controls everyday decisions. Someone has an idea that could completely change their life, but never acts because they imagine being criticized. Another person remains in an unhappy job because uncertainty feels more frightening than unhappiness. Someone else stays silent during an important conversation because they fear looking foolish. In every case, the decision was not made by logic. It was made by anticipation. The brain created an emotional movie about the future, and the person obeyed it without questioning whether it reflected reality. This is why fear becomes one of the greatest enemies of dangerous confidence. It convinces intelligent people to surrender opportunities they never even attempted to pursue. Another psychological trap is perfectionism. Many people tell themselves they are simply waiting for the right moment, the right skills, or complete certainty before taking action. But beneath perfectionism often hides fear wearing a respectable disguise. Waiting to become perfect feels productive because it protects the ego from possible failure. If you never act, you never have to face criticism. But there is a hidden price. Every delay teaches your brain that fear deserves obedience. The longer you postpone action, the stronger fear becomes. Dangerously confident people understand that confidence is never created through endless preparation alone. It is created by proving to yourself again and again that you can survive uncertainty. The human mind also exaggerates the importance of other people's opinions. Psychologists often describe this tendency as the spotlight effect. People naturally believe everyone is paying far more attention to their mistakes than they actually are. You replay one awkward conversation for days while the other person has already forgotten it. You hesitate to take a risk because you imagine everyone watching your every move, when in reality, most people are too occupied with their own insecurities to analyze yours. Dangerous confidence grows the moment you recognize this illusion. You stop living as though you are standing on a stage under constant judgment and begin realizing that your greatest audience has always been your own mind. Every courageous action sends a powerful message to the brain. When you face a fear instead of avoiding it, your mind begins collecting evidence that you are more capable than it originally believed. This process gradually rewrites your internal identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who waits until feeling ready. You become someone who acts despite uncertainty. That identity is the foundation of dangerous confidence because it is built on experience rather than imagination. Every difficult conversation you have, every calculated risk you take, every challenge you willingly face becomes proof that fear does not deserve authority over your life. This does not mean becoming reckless or ignoring genuine danger. Dangerously confident people do not deny fear, they educate it. They separate realistic caution from psychological exaggeration. They prepare carefully, think strategically, and evaluate risks honestly, but they refuse to let imagined disasters become permanent excuses. Their decisions are guided by values and long-term vision rather than temporary emotional discomfort. That balance makes their confidence both powerful and sustainable. Eventually, something remarkable happens. Fear no longer disappears completely, but it loses its position as the leader of your decisions. You begin understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear become your identity. Every time you move forward while your mind is predicting failure, you weaken fear's authority and strengthen your own self-belief. This is what makes confidence truly dangerous. It is not loud, emotional, or arrogant. It is the quiet certainty that fear may speak, but it no longer gets to decide. And once fear no longer controls your actions, you naturally stop feeling the need to defend yourself, because people with dangerous confidence understand that constant explanations are often another hidden form of insecurity. The fastest way to recognize an insecure person is not by how quietly they speak or how nervous they appear. It is by how desperately they feel the need to explain themselves. Every criticism demands a defense. Every misunderstanding requires a long justification. Every decision must be approved by someone else before they can feel at peace. They believe that if they can simply find the perfect words, everyone will finally understand them. But the opposite usually happens. The more they explain, the more they communicate uncertainty. Dangerous confidence follows a completely different psychology. It understands that your value is not determined by how successfully you convince everyone to agree with you. A dangerously confident person knows that not every accusation deserves a response, not every opinion deserves attention, and not every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. This quiet certainty is what makes their confidence so powerful. Think about why people over-explain in the first place. It rarely comes from confidence. It comes from fear. The fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being disliked, the fear of losing someone's approval, the fear that if people think badly of them, their value somehow decreases. This is why over-explaining is often a hidden form of validation seeking. Instead of trusting their own intentions, they become emotionally dependent on other people's interpretations. They feel responsible for controlling how everyone sees them. But here is the psychological truth that dangerously confident people understand. You can control your actions, but you can never completely control another person's perception. The moment you stop trying to manage every opinion, your confidence becomes far more dangerous because it no longer depends on something impossible to control. Human psychology makes this even more interesting. People naturally respect certainty more than desperation. When someone constantly defends every decision, others begin wondering why so much defense is necessary. Excessive explanations often create more suspicion than silence ever could. Imagine two people making the same decision. One calmly says, "This is what I've decided," and moves forward. The other spends 10 minutes explaining every reason, apologizing, and trying to convince everyone they made the right choice. Which person appears stronger? Which person seems more certain? The difference is not intelligence. It is psychological confidence. Dangerous confidence does not seek permission to exist. This does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or refusing to communicate. There is a significant difference between healthy communication and emotional justification. Healthy communication explains because it adds clarity. Emotional justification explains because it seeks acceptance. A dangerously confident person is happy to clarify facts when necessary, but they refuse to beg for understanding from people who have already decided not to understand. They recognize that some individuals ask questions not because they seek truth, but because they want control. Endless explanations only give those people more opportunities to criticize, manipulate, or create confusion. One of the greatest psychological traps is believing that if you explain yourself well enough, everyone will eventually respect you. Reality rarely works that way. Some people misunderstand you because they lack information. Those people deserve honest communication. But others misunderstand you because misunderstanding benefits them. It allows them to judge you, manipulate you, or maintain their own beliefs. No amount of explanation changes a mind that has already chosen its conclusion. Dangerously confident people recognize this difference. They invest energy where understanding is possible and refuse to waste emotional strength where misunderstanding is intentional. Notice how criticism affects most people. One negative comment can erase the emotional impact of 10 compliments. They immediately begin defending themselves, replaying conversations, trying to prove that the criticism was unfair. Their mind becomes trapped in an invisible battle for approval. But dangerous confidence changes this entire pattern. Instead of reacting emotionally, it asks one simple question: is there truth in this criticism? If the answer is yes, the criticism becomes an opportunity for growth. If the answer is no, it becomes someone else's opinion, not a definition of your identity. This psychological discipline prevents criticism from becoming emotional control. Another reason dangerously confident people explain less is because they understand that actions always carry more authority than words. Anyone can promise, defend, justify, or persuade. Very few people consistently demonstrate their character through repeated behavior. The strongest reputation is never built by speeches about integrity. It is built by living with integrity long enough that explanations become unnecessary. When your actions repeatedly match your values, people begin trusting what they see more than what they hear. That is why dangerous confidence remains focused on consistent behavior rather than constant persuasion. There is also a deeper psychological freedom that comes from letting go of the need to correct every false opinion. Many people exhaust themselves trying to make sure nobody misunderstands them. They want every conversation to end with complete agreement. But life does not work that way. Some people will dislike you even when you have done nothing wrong. Others will criticize your success because it reminds them of their own fears. Some will invent stories because accepting the truth would challenge their beliefs. If your emotional peace depends on correcting every misunderstanding, your peace will always remain fragile. Dangerously confident people protect their energy by accepting that they cannot manage every narrative others create about them. This is why silence becomes such a powerful psychological tool. Silence is not weakness when it comes from confidence. It is strength under control. It communicates that your self-worth does not require constant defense. It shows that your identity is stable enough to survive disagreement, criticism, and temporary misunderstanding. The person who remains calm while everyone else demands explanations often appears more powerful because they refuse to surrender their emotional balance simply to satisfy public opinion. Their calmness cannot be purchased through praise or destroyed through criticism. Eventually, you realize something that changes the way you move through life. Every unnecessary explanation is often an attempt to borrow confidence from someone else's approval. The moment you stop asking the world to constantly validate your choices, you begin trusting your own judgment at a completely different level. You speak with greater certainty, act with greater conviction, and remain calm even when others disagree. That is what makes confidence truly dangerous. It no longer depends on winning arguments or convincing critics. It depends on knowing who you are, acting according to your values, and allowing your life, not endless explanations, to speak on your behalf. And once you stop wasting energy defending yourself, you gain something far more valuable, the emotional control that makes a person truly impossible to shake. If there is one quality that separates ordinary confidence from dangerous confidence, it is emotional control. Anyone can appear confident when life is going well, when people agree with them, when success comes easily, and when nothing challenges their ego. But the moment criticism, failure, disrespect, or pressure appears, their confidence begins to collapse because it was built on favorable circumstances rather than inner stability. Dangerous confidence is different. It is not measured by how you behave when everything is comfortable. It is revealed by how you respond when life gives you every reason to lose control. The person who can master their emotions while everyone else reacts impulsively possesses a level of confidence that cannot be easily broken or manipulated. Most people believe emotions simply happen to them. They think anger, fear, jealousy, frustration, or anxiety automatically determine their behavior. But psychology tells a different story. Emotions are natural, yet reactions are choices. The gap between feeling an emotion and acting on it is where dangerous confidence is built. Weak minds allow emotions to control decisions. Strong minds acknowledge emotions without surrendering to them. This difference changes everything. A dangerously confident person still feels disappointment, anger, and fear, but those emotions no longer become the leaders of their actions. They become information rather than commands. Think about how easily people lose control. A single insult ruins their entire day. One rejection makes them question their worth. One negative comment online changes their mood for hours. One disagreement turns into an emotional argument they later regret. Every reaction reveals something important. It tells the world exactly which emotional buttons can be pressed to influence them. Once people discover your triggers, they gain psychological power over you. They know how to make you angry, defensive, insecure, or desperate. This is why dangerous confidence depends on emotional discipline. The less predictable your reactions become, the harder it is for anyone to manipulate your behavior. Manipulative people understand this principle extremely well. They often do not attack your logic first. They attack your emotions. They provoke you because they know an emotional person rarely thinks clearly. They criticize you unfairly because they want you to react instead of reflect. They interrupt your peace because they understand that once you lose emotional control, you begin making decisions you would never make while calm. A dangerously confident person refuses to play this game. They recognize that emotional control is not about winning an argument, It is about refusing to surrender ownership of their mind. The calm person usually possesses more psychological power than the loudest person in the room because calmness cannot be easily manipulated. Anger provides one of the clearest examples of this principle. Anger itself is not weakness. Sometimes it points toward injustice or necessary change. The problem begins when anger controls behavior instead of informing it. People who explode emotionally often believe they appear powerful, but in reality, they reveal that someone else successfully controlled their emotional state. The person who provoked them quietly gained influence over their actions. Dangerous confidence transforms anger differently. It slows down before responding. It asks whether the reaction serves a meaningful purpose or merely satisfies temporary emotion. This pause creates enormous psychological strength because it prevents others from controlling your next move. The same pattern appears with jealousy. Ordinary confidence compares constantly. It worries about another person's success, appearance, wealth, or recognition. Every comparison weakens self-belief because attention shifts away from personal growth and towards someone else's achievements. Dangerously confident people refuse to measure themselves this way. They understand that comparison is often a distraction created by insecurity. Instead of asking why someone else is succeeding, they ask how they can become better than they were yesterday. Their energy remains focused on self-mastery rather than competition for approval. This mindset makes their confidence remarkably stable because it no longer depends on being ahead of everyone else. Another emotional trap is desperation. Desperation quietly destroys confidence because it communicates dependence. People become desperate for love, respect, opportunities, attention, or recognition. They begin chasing people who ignore them, explaining themselves to those who never intended to understand, and sacrificing their standards simply to avoid losing someone or something. But dangerous confidence follows a different psychology. It understands that anything pursued through desperation loses value because desperation places your emotional stability in someone else's hands. A person who remains emotionally centered, even when facing uncertainty, naturally appears stronger because they cannot be pressured into abandoning their principles. Emotional control also transforms the way you make decisions. Ordinary confidence reacts to immediate feelings. It seeks instant relief from discomfort. It avoids difficult conversations, escapes temporary pain, and chooses convenience over growth. Dangerous confidence thinks beyond the present emotion. It is willing to experience short-term discomfort in exchange for long-term freedom. It sets boundaries even when they create conflict. It speaks honestly even when silence feels easier. It walks away from unhealthy situations even when attachment makes leaving painful. These choices are not emotionally easy, but they are psychologically liberating because they strengthen self-respect instead of weakening it. One of the greatest misconceptions is believing emotional control means suppressing feelings. It does not. Suppression hides emotions until they eventually explode. Dangerous confidence does something different. It acknowledges emotions honestly, understands where they come from, and then chooses responses that align with personal values rather than temporary impulses. This creates consistency. Other people may not always agree with you, but they learn something important. You cannot be easily provoked, manipulated, or emotionally controlled. That reputation quietly earns respect because emotional stability is far rarer than emotional intensity. Over time, this discipline changes your entire identity. Instead of becoming someone who reacts to every challenge, you become someone who responds with purpose. Instead of allowing criticism to dictate your mood, you evaluate it calmly. Instead of allowing rejection to define your worth, you continue moving forward. Instead of letting fear, anger, jealousy, or desperation decide your future, you place your principles above your emotions. That is what makes confidence truly dangerous. It is not loud, aggressive, or arrogant. It is the quiet ability to remain mentally steady while the world around you becomes chaotic. And a person who cannot be emotionally shaken becomes almost impossible for anyone else to control. Once your emotions stop controlling your decisions, you reach a level of confidence where walking away from anything that weakens your self-respect no longer feels like a loss. It becomes the greatest proof of your strength. One of the clearest signs of dangerous confidence is the ability to walk away without fear. Most people think confidence is about speaking loudly, dominating conversations, or proving everyone wrong. But true confidence reveals itself in a much quieter way. It appears when you no longer feel the need to chase what refuses to choose you. It appears when you can leave a toxic relationship, a disrespectful friendship, an unhealthy environment, or an opportunity that demands you sacrifice your dignity. The person who can walk away from what no longer serves their growth possesses a level of psychological power that no amount of status or popularity can replace. Dangerous confidence is not about forcing people to value you. It is about valuing yourself enough to leave when they do not. The greatest reason people struggle to walk away is not love, loyalty, or hope. It is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of missing an opportunity, fear that nothing better will come. Fear convinces people that staying in situations that damage them is somehow safer than facing uncertainty. This is how psychological dependence develops. Instead of asking, is this relationship healthy? People begin asking, what will happen to me if I lose this person? Instead of asking, does this environment respect me? They ask, what if I never find another chance? Their decisions become controlled by scarcity rather than self-respect. A dangerously confident person refuses to let fear become the foundation of their choices. They understand that remaining where they are constantly disrespected always costs more than leaving. One of the strongest psychological traps is believing that your value depends on being chosen by others. Many people spend years trying to earn love from emotionally unavailable partners, approval from impossible to please parents, respect from toxic friends, or recognition from workplaces that never appreciate them. They believe one more sacrifice, one more explanation, or one more chance will finally change everything. But dangerous confidence recognizes a painful truth. When someone consistently shows you how little they value your presence, believing your endless effort will suddenly transform their character often leads only to deeper disappointment. Confidence grows the moment you stop chasing acceptance from people who benefit from keeping you uncertain. Manipulative people often rely on this uncertainty. They give attention one day and withdraw it the next. They praise you when they need something and criticize you when they want control. This inconsistency creates emotional addiction because the human brain naturally craves unpredictable rewards. You begin working harder for occasional moments of approval, believing that if you just try enough, the relationship will return to how it once felt. Dangerous confidence breaks this cycle by recognizing the pattern instead of becoming trapped inside it. It understands that consistency reveals genuine respect, while emotional instability often reveals hidden control. Walking away is also difficult because of the time people have already invested. Psychologists call this the sunk cost effect. The mind resists leaving because it believes abandoning something means admitting that previous effort was wasted. Someone remains in an unhappy relationship because they already spent years trying to fix it. Someone stays in a career that destroys their mental health because they invested too much education and experience to change direction. Someone tolerates repeated disrespect because they cannot accept that their loyalty was never equally valued. But dangerous confidence understands that continuing a harmful path simply because you already walked it never turns it into the right destination. The courage to leave is often the courage to protect your future rather than remain trapped by your past. There is another psychological reason walking away creates such powerful confidence. Every time you choose self-respect over emotional dependence, your brain receives evidence that your worth is not determined by external circumstances. You begin trusting yourself in a deeper way. Instead of believing, I need this person to be happy, you begin discovering, I can create happiness without surrendering my dignity. That realization transforms identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone waiting to be accepted and become someone capable of choosing environments that deserve your presence. This shift is what separates dangerous confidence from ordinary confidence. Ordinary confidence hopes to be valued. Dangerous confidence already knows its value and refuses to negotiate it. This does not mean leaving every difficult situation. Growth often requires patience, forgiveness, and honest communication. Walking away should never become an excuse to avoid responsibility or abandon meaningful relationships at the first sign of discomfort. Dangerous confidence knows the difference between temporary conflict and permanent disrespect. It fights for relationships built on mutual respect, but it refuses to remain where manipulation, humiliation, dishonesty, or repeated disrespect have become the normal pattern. Strength is not found in never facing hardship. Strength is found in refusing to normalize what continuously destroys your peace. Notice something else about people who can walk away. They never beg to be understood. They never chase those who repeatedly reject them. They never sacrifice their principles simply to avoid being alone. This does not make them cold or heartless. It makes them emotionally independent. They understand that loneliness is temporary, but losing self-respect creates wounds that often last much longer. Because they are comfortable standing alone when necessary, they become incredibly difficult to control. No one can threaten them with abandonment because they already know they can survive without approval, attention, or constant reassurance. The ability to walk away also changes how other people respond to you. People naturally recognize those who refuse to tolerate disrespect. Boundaries communicate value. When you consistently protect your standards, others begin understanding that access to your time, energy, and presence is a privilege rather than something guaranteed. This quiet confidence often earns more respect than endless attempts to please everyone because people instinctively value what refuses to be treated carelessly. Eventually, you realize that dangerous confidence has very little to do with making people stay. It has everything to do with knowing that if someone chooses to leave, disrespect you, manipulate you, or repeatedly ignore your worth, your identity remains untouched. You no longer chase what runs away, cling to what weakens you, or beg for what should have been freely given. You choose yourself, not because you believe you are better than others, but because you finally understand that protecting your self-respect is the foundation of every truly confident life. And once you no longer fear walking away from anything that diminishes your value, you become the kind of person whose confidence cannot be shaken by praise, criticism, rejection, or any circumstance life places in your path. Everything we have explored leads to one final truth. Dangerous confidence is not something you wear. It is someone you become. Most people spend their lives searching for techniques to appear more confident. They change the way they dress, practice stronger body language, memorize powerful phrases, or imitate the behavior of successful people. While these things may improve appearance, they do not transform identity. The world can often recognize the difference between confidence that is performed and confidence that is lived. Performed confidence disappears the moment life becomes difficult. Lived confidence remains steady through criticism, rejection, failure, uncertainty, and success alike. That is why dangerous confidence is not an act. It is a psychological identity that no circumstance can easily shake. Think about the journey you have taken. At first, confidence seemed connected to other people's approval. Then you discovered that fear survives only when it controls your decisions. After that, you realized that constantly explaining yourself is often a hidden search for validation. You learned that emotional discipline is more powerful than emotional reactions, and that the ability to walk away from anything that destroys your self-respect is one of the strongest signs of inner strength. None of these lessons exist separately. Together, they build a person who can no longer be emotionally controlled by praise, criticism, rejection, manipulation, or temporary failure. This is exactly what makes someone dangerously confident. They have removed every psychological chain that once controlled their behavior. One of the greatest differences between ordinary confidence and dangerous confidence is consistency. Ordinary confidence changes with circumstances. It feels powerful after success and weak after failure. It grows when people admire you and disappears when they criticize you. It depends on outcomes that are often outside your control. Dangerous confidence works differently. It is built on principles rather than circumstances. A person with dangerous confidence does not suddenly lose their identity because one opportunity fails, one relationship ends, or one stranger refuses to believe in them. Their confidence comes from knowing they will continue acting according to their values, regardless of temporary results. That consistency creates a level of mental stability that most people spend their entire lives searching for. This does not mean believing you are perfect. In fact, dangerous confidence becomes stronger the moment you stop needing perfection. Insecure people often hide mistakes because they fear judgment. They avoid challenges because failure might damage the image they have created. But dangerous confidence understands that growth requires discomfort.